Hi, this is Rob Chase with cuttingtothechase.us, brought to you by the inlandnorthwestreport.com. Today our guest is Cecily Wright. Cecily has been emceeing Northwest Grassroots in the Spokane Valley for almost 10 years now. It's a good organization, and a lot of people go there to speak. They have a YouTube every month that they put out, and it's open mic too. So if you want to come down and watch a good documentary and meet other people who are grassroots people, come down. And tell us about Northwest Grassroots, Cecily.
Well, like you said, it started about 10 years ago. And the whole idea, what I really noticed is that we sort of had a lack of education. We had a lot of different groups that had one cause, and they just started to sort of dwindle away. And it was, how can we meet together, talk about items that are, of substance at the time, and get people more involved and really understanding the process. So, a lot of times we hear that, we want to follow the Constitution and we're constitutionalists or we're this or that, but many people don't really understand what the Constitution is. So out of this, we started having, really promoted people taking Constitution courses, and we had some pretty good instructors here in Spokane that would do that.
So it gives people a voice then.
Right.
Not just nationally, but locally too.
Absolutely locally.
We kind of, and I think that was the secret to Donald Trump's victory, is he tweeted around the press with the new technologies they have today. So the internet changed a lot of things. Instead of just maybe us throwing our shoes at the TV or getting upset, then we actually do have a voice in there. We can talk to other people. We can be on the internet. Anybody who wants to can be like Chet Hutley or David Brinkley back in those days. So we just don't leave it to them. So, but it's also a lot of education. Now, one thing I got involved in after I got the internet was I didn't realize all the stuff I had never learned in civics class, like at high school, or that I'd never heard off the mainstream press. But this is all open source. It's open to anything that's there, and I think that's wonderful. If anybody who believes they have a different perspective on things is allowed to speak. So we just don't rely on, say, the Spokesman Review or the local TV stations.
Right. Well, and what I've noticed with the news anymore is we don't have, like you mentioned, Huntley Brinkley, we don't really have news reporters anymore. We have people that read a script that's been given to them. Mm-hmm. And they aren't investigative reporters. They don't really dig into a story to really see the basis for what they're reporting. They're just reading.
What journalism, would you say, in your lifetime has gone downhill then?
Well, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So it's just, what we try to bring is just a variety of different topics, and sometimes we have people that you might consider to be controversial, but we don't stop people from attending. So you could have people from different parties at open mic talking about what's important to them. Just because you're attending Northwest Grassroots doesn't mean that you have to go along with everything that's being said, because there's a variety of people out there with a variety of points of view, and that's what we want to promote.
Well, we shouldn't be afraid of controversy. I mean, Jesus Christ was controversial. Galileo is controversial. Today Donald Trump was controversial and still is too. Mm-hmm. So, I think we should always not depend on the directed crowd, or the conventional wisdom, because that's where a lot of things come from, single minds that have the germ of an idea, and it suddenly, changes history. Mm-hmm. Now, what have you seen in your lifetime, that maybe the good and the bad you've been observing here as a Canadian citizen, as you were when you came to this country? You've been around here for a long time, so you also had the benefit of kind of a outsider's look at the United States. So what good things did you see about the United States, and what bad things in the past?
Well, I think when you're young and then starting a family, working and all that kind of stuff, you don't pay a whole lot of attention to truly what's going on, unless it's a big event. Of course, in my lifetime, we had the assassination of the Kennedys, Martin Luther King, things that way, which, those were terrible. But what I can remember, that I was very involved with the Kennedy campaigns, and really felt that they were going to bring some change and some openness and some just a little bit more life to our government. And I can remember the night that Robert Kennedy was shot. It was sort of like I just turned off. That was it. I was done.
I turned
And
off the
stopped.
TV just maybe 60 seconds before the reports came back to the room. I remember everyone leaving the dais and all that, and I turned off the TV. If I'd, watched a little bit longer, I would have been, not that they had TV that would have been in the back, you just saw recordings of that, but it's a very historic moment, I think. And
Well,
of course, Robert Kennedy was very controversial too.
I wasn't there for the history. I was there for being involved and feeling that I could see government changing. And what it, to me, what it did was just say that all your emotion and your passion and the whole thing, it didn't matter. Things were just going to continue the way they were, and there wasn't a whole heck of a lot about what any of us could do.
Well, I remember the 1960 campaign, probably the earliest. And in that, you had John F. Kennedy running against Richard Nixon. And the reason I started paying attention was because there wasn't much else on TV at the time, and I had to watch whatever happened to be on TV after cartoon hour. But my mother was for Richard Nixon, my father was for Jack Kennedy, and I thought, why? Usually they agree upon things, but they're different on that. So it got me paying attention to that too. And then I think by 1964, I was a Goldwater fan. I think I had a conservative bent to me when I was younger. But I went to a school in Philadelphia where I think it was myself and one other boy were Goldwater fans. So we used to get pig-biled at recess by all the Johnson collectivist, kids too. So it was always kind of controversial, but I didn't really think about getting involved. It always seemed like politics was something other people did, not me. I was just trying to, like you say, raise my family and, try to, have a job and try to follow the American dream if I could. But then when I got the internet, like I said, that's when I first started noticing, hey, there's a lot of stuff about the country I hadn't heard. And I thought, well, my dad had 6 kids. My mom didn't work. And then I thought, well, now my wife and I both work with 2 kids, paycheck to paycheck. What's the difference? And I realized it was taxes and inflation. And never before, we had slavery in this country, we got rid of it. Well, now we're all slaves, I think, to the 1/10 of 1%. Unless you have $100,000 income, you really don't have freedom anymore.
Many people have that now. It's quite interesting how inflation has changed, and you think that it sounds like you're making a lot of money when you're making 100,000, but it's probably equivalent to 40,000, years ago.
No, we lived in several neighborhoods in Seattle when I was growing up, and the houses were, I think, probably $5,000 to $10,000 homes, and I think my dad was making, $10,000 or $12,000 a year, and that was pretty good. He was an engineer at Boeing, but now those same homes are like $500,000, and but I think that's far outdistanced, even maybe someone's making $100,000, it's far outdistanced, that and all the other costs, so it's the main thing I think is the hidden tax of inflation, because that's the most regressive tax, I think that we have, because people complain, well, a sales tax is regressive because everyone has to pay for it, but everyone has to pay for inflation too. And you were actually, I think, for the Spokane area, you came on early supporting the Donald Trump campaign.
Well, like I said, after the Kennedys and Martin Luther, just the 60s were terrible, and I dropped out of politics. It just, to my way of thinking, it made no difference what individuals did. This country was just marching down a path that we really didn't have much control over. And unfortunately, I think I was quite right. And so Donald Trump really was the first candidate since then that really sort of just put it out there that, he wanted to change the way things were done in Washington, D.C. We needed to start paying more attention to the citizens of the United States. We needed to care more about this country and to be more, people think it's wrong, but America first. I think that's very right. We do need to put our country first and our citizens first. And you don't put the citizens first when we're spending billions and billions of dollars with the crazy immigration laws that we have at this point, things that way. He's addressing things that have just been tearing this country up for a number of years, spending a lot of money, diminishing who we are, and nobody's wanted to talk about them. So we are talking about them now. Like you say, he's controversial, but at least he's shaking things up, and hopefully people will pay a little bit more attention to how our country is being governed, how we're spending the money. The amount of money that we're spending in all forms of government. It's crazy. It's just the idea that you can continue to just keep spending, and the money just is going to appear.
Well, I think he's
And
taking...
that's happening at the local level.
Yeah.
It's happening at the state level. It's happening at the national level.
So he's sort of a maybe one of those people that comes along every once in a while that changes the direction of the country. But if he's only taking $1 for his salary, and he didn't have to do this, who would want to take all the acrimony and the attacks, not only himself but his family and all that? So that's a very noble, high idealistic thing, and
I wonder if he has second thoughts.
Oh, I'm sure. But I think maybe there's something in him. He's an achiever. He wants to, like I remember in psychology we studied Maslow's needs hierarchy scale. So at the bottom rung of the pyramid you have your basic needs, and then you get higher, and you have eventually you have self-actualization. You have that one thing in your life that you want to achieve. And I think for him, he would flip skyscrapers or casinos like people would flip houses. So I think he sees flipping the country as the ultimate challenge. I think that's what he's got on. But if he's doing that, why is he so hated by so many people?
Well, this was said back in the Romney campaign, I believe, and it was, if you say the same thing enough times, people think it's the truth. And the same rhetoric is repeated over and over and over again. And people will say, Trump is a racist, let's say. And so you ask them, well, what has you say that? Well, because, I heard it. Everybody says it. That kind of thing. They don't have a basis for what they're saying that they believe, but they're repeating it. And I think that's something that's very scary about our society at this point, is we have a lot of people that don't think. They watch television and they believe everything that they're watching. It's in very short sound bites, because apparently our attention span is very, very short. And this is how we're educating our population. This is the information that people are using to vote on, and that's frightening, because they don't have. I have a thing that, we need informed voters. We don't need a lot of voters. We need voters who are informed and really understand the issues and the platforms of people, and that's why they're voting. They're not voting because of a letter behind people's names or things that way. And we've lost that.
Yeah, I think maybe the country would have welcomed him 30 or 40 years ago, but instead now, because it's a lot of it has to do with journalism and the press. I think in the late 90s, or maybe it was the George W. Bush administration, passed a law where now 6 major organizations own 95% of the press. So you see them very repetitious. You don't have the old journalists like Edward R. Murrow, or people that, they report the news and the facts to the best of their ability. Now they're just kind of like just all parroting what they've been told to say.
Well, I think where we have to really think that things aren't really as bad as it sort of appears when you're listening to the national news or reading the newspapers or things, is that we have so many big cities concentrated with a population that seem to feel that they think the same way the rest of the country does, and they don't. I consider Spokane area and the center of the country and the smaller communities like what they call the flyover area. These are the people that are really, they're America. And they did have their voices heard, and I just applaud them, because they keep pretty quiet, they keep to themselves, they keep working, they do their thing, they raise their families, they do whatever families do, but they do get out and vote, and they're voting for the more conservative American principles that we need to continue to promote.
Well, I think as Trump supporters were called deplorables, and but I think a lot of people looked at us and said, well, we may not agree with them, but they're not deplorable as in terms of what the word used to mean, deplorable.
I have a button.
It says deplorable too.
I'm a proud deplorable.
But even say if we're against open borders, well, you're a racist. Well, the words like racism mean something else now, because people have been educated to mean that if anybody is not marching with the agenda they're not following direction, then they're racist. Or full of hate, for instance, is another one too.
Yeah. No, it is sad how the rhetoric has really divided the country terribly. And it's almost this attitude that if you just don't embrace and love everything and only criticize these folks that sort of want America to be more like how our founders wanted it, you're a bad person.
Or even global warming. Okay, you don't believe in global warming, you must hate the environment then too. So at Northwest Grassroots the other night, you gave, I thought, a pretty good talk on the environment from a conservative point of view.
Well, I definitely believe in climate change. And that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be global warming. It could be global cooling. But if you really look over the years and years and millennia of the Earth, our climate has changed dramatically, many times. But you can't say that fossil fuels caused it. And so climate does change. And I thought I probably had some people going woo at Northwest Grassroots because I was pointing out that in Inslee's budget he had appropriated $1.1 billion for a Save the Orca Whale, the southern residents of the orca population, to see what we could do to help restore and protect them because they're diminishing, they're starving, and yet what they depend on to eat are Chinook salmon. We are told as residents of the state of Washington, when you're catching your Chinook salmon out there in the Puget Sound, that the recommended amount of eating that is only 8 ounces of Chinook salmon a week because it's contaminated. It has toxicity. It's full of toxins. Those orcas eat 300 pounds of salmon a day. So just think of what's happening to them because of the way that we've taken care of, not only the waters coming downstream into the Puget Sound, but the residues that are dumped in from the different water systems, sewage systems, ships, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, we are contaminating our planet.
Well, that's one thing I heard Art Bell say like almost 20 years ago on Coast to Coast was we can't throw anything away because there is no away anymore. So we just can't throw stuff out in the ocean. So I'm conservative and I do question a lot of the environmental things, but the oceans and the atmosphere are pretty tricky, especially since you can't really fight that at the state level. It's sort of an international thing on the Earth. So hopefully people have good intents, but yet still global warming. I said when I ran a number of years ago for Congress, I said I'll worry about global warming when I see the Vikings returning to Iceland, or to Greenland rather, and I still haven't seen. I was kind of being, maybe a little bit cavalier about that too, because I'm open to anything. But we do need to be good stewards of the Earth, and God put orcas here, so they need to be here. I think Christians would get behind that.
Well, it's sad to see a beautiful animal like that being under so much stress and duress because of human beings. But
I do think we got bigger fish to fry.
Of course we do.
Well, for instance, the global warming thing, when I ask these people how much carbon, actually CO2, is there in the atmosphere, most people don't know. Well, it's 0.04%. Of that, 3% is man-made. So if you were to take the atmosphere and say it's 100 miles thick, it's only the last 68 feet that's CO2, and we need CO2. We wouldn't be able to live without CO2. So but I do think there's bigger things like Fukushima. That's just not going away, but you don't hear much about it anymore, or all the plastic in the ocean, or finding the right balance, say on the Columbia River. I think we built those dams up there, Chief Joseph and Grand Coulee, and shut off the salmon that used to go up that area. So maybe there's fish ladders they could build. It could be a good makes work stimulus type project, that we could do that. But also keep irrigation and the shippage, going down from the farms out to the countries, for our economy too. So I think there's probably an answer there, but, we just have to be able to find it by working together.
Well, I'd like to say that I think the United States, as far as countries go in the world, is quite environmentally friendly. As far as looking back when I was a kid, nobody really thought much about throwing trash out car windows or things that way. So that has cleaned up. But as far as the different things that we use, let's say the toxicity that we have in so many of the manufacturing plants that we have, or let's say what we spray on ground to kill
Right.
weeds, things this way. We haven't been that environmentally, conservative and friendly. So as I think the tossing stuff out windows, that kind of thing has certainly improved. I don't think that we look that carefully at some of the things that we've developed to make crops grow greener and bigger and more, or how we control different things. I don't think we've really looked
Well, I think
down the road.
if people of goodwill come and reason together at places like Northwest Grassroots, and you actually have a lot of the representatives come and speak there too, that actually make the laws for us. So that's a good thing. Instead of driving across state to go to Olympia, a lot of times you can come to Northwest Grassroots and you advertise it early who the speakers are. So tell us about, when does Northwest Grassroots meet then, and where?
Well, we're in a little bit of a transition right now. We have been meeting on the second Wednesday of the month, but that schedule has to change, so I need to send out a notice and ask people to vote or something. But it'll be the second week of the month, either Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday. Not sure which one we'll
no
end
night
up
is
picking.
perfect
Right.
for everybody.
I know,
You just got to pick a night and stick to it, I think.
Yeah.
And where do you meet at?
Players and Spectators, which is a little east of Pines on Sprague.
Okay, where the bowling alley is, kind of
That's
behind
the old
Bank of
bowling
America.
alley. Behind B of A and next to the Spokane Valley Sheriff's Station.
Okay, and what guests have you had on there that are memorable to you?
Oh,
that
my
people would have
goodness.
liked to have come and seen. You would wish people had known more about it. They would have loved to have seen these people, because still, even when I went last Wednesday night, people still, I didn't even know about this. It's been around for almost 10 years now.
Yeah. Well, I know Trevor Loudon I was very impressed with. I'm trying to think of other speakers.
You
We've
had the
some...
guy who was in charge of Architects and Engineers for Truth 9/11. I thought he was an interesting speaker.
Well,
too.
you did and John did. I call that conspiracy night myself. So,
Controversy.
Right. So we have a little bit of everything, and I like the when we can get the candidates together to debate. That's interesting to really hear the different points of view. And we invite all the candidates, not just Republicans, not just Democrats.
Yeah, you had
but all of
Vicki
them.
Dalton, who's a county auditor, Democrat, speak last time I was
Right,
there.
I wanted her to talk about elections because and election security here in the state of Washington, because we've had so many different reports out from other areas, Florida, Virginia, Texas, as far as the voting rolls. Texas found 95,000 non-citizens registered to vote in the state of Texas. Now, not all of them voted, but some did. And you're going, but they're not supposed to do that. That's a felony to do that. And yet, I look at the state of Washington, and what they do, as you mentioned, I'm from Canada, and I only became an American citizen recently. So there are many years that I got driver's licenses here without being a citizen. And here in the state of Washington, when you're renewing your license, they ask you if you're registered to vote. So I would say, no, I'm not. Well, we can take care of that for you now. And I said, no, please don't. I'm not a citizen. But can you imagine a person that doesn't have a good command of the English language thinking that there's a government official telling them that they can register to vote?
Yeah.
They probably think that's okay. Or what if you're here illegally and a government official is asking you if you've registered to vote? And if you're going to say, no, I'm here illegally, you're not going to do that. You think they're going to throw you in jail or something. So they just don't know what to say or what to do. Now, many of them know they're not supposed to vote, and they don't vote. But it's still, that's one of the things that sort of bothers me about this motor voter registration.
Well, it's almost uncanny how close some of the elections are, like 1960 and 2000 at the national levels. And even in Spokane County, the assessor's race, I think we probably had a couple 100,000 people voting, and that was decided by, I think, 105 votes.
It was really low like that, yeah. And what's cool about those really close races is that, we have to do the recount, And the recounts come out almost exactly the same way as what the machine counts did from when they first processed the ballots. So it gives you a little bit more secure feeling about how our election system here, at least in Spokane County, is being run.
And you're doing this, I think, for posterity. You have a granddaughter, Madison, I think.
Addison.
Addison, and you're doing this for her, I think, too. And
Well,
not her, just her, but everyone, because I think it's important that when we pass the torch, we try to leave a better country than the one we were born into.
well, we aren't doing a very good job.
No, I think we're getting an F on that. Well, anyway, come to Northwest Grassroots, and it's a great place. I'm usually there 90% of the time. I like the open mic. I'm a Toastmaster, so I get to say my 2 cents, but you can too. And I think I've seen more documentaries than I've actually seen actual movies, over the last several years, but they're very informative, and it does increase your worldview. And then, it's a way to get involved. I think we have a duty to God, to our family. We have a duty to different things, our jobs, but we also have a civic duty. So it's a good way to get involved and learn things and fulfill our civic duty. So this has been Cutting to the Chase.us, brought to you by InlandNorthwestReport.com. So join us next video, and we'll have a different guest. And thank you for being there. And don't forget to pray first.